Welcome to the Ar-15 podcast. This show is for you if you just bought your first AR or if you've been building them for years. There is something we can all do to take our black rifles to the next level. My name is Nick Dooley, and I am not joined by a very special co-host tonight because Garth had some firefighter-y things that he had to do, but I am joined tonight by our very special guest, Nathan Mitchell of Mitchell Defense.
Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to be on the show.
Yep, cue the amazing studio audience background noise.
Yeah.
Yep, those things all happening that won't get added in post. But
yeah.
So that stuff's going on. And so Mitchell Defense, as our listeners have heard, we have talked about them before, just a little bit in passing. And so Nathan is from them. And Nathan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the company?
Yeah, so I'm Nathan Mitchell. I am the owner and founder of Mitchell Defense. My background is military. I was a recon corpsman in the Navy, which the Marines don't have their own medics, so they use the Navy and then the recon side of the house. So I did that after I got out of the military in 2015. Sounds right. Went to out in the oil field, ran the family's pipe inspection business. We ended up buying our dad. I mean, my brother were running it. Bought my dad out. We did non-destructive testing on oil field downhole tubing. It's very scientific.
Super exciting stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we got done with that, and we actually had a charter business out in the Virgin Islands where we were running boat charters, and I've owned restaurants down in the Virgin Islands and some bunch of condos and stuff, and then Mitchell Defense.
So a serial entrepreneur.
I have learned my lessons, and I learned them quick.
Yeah, it's what can I do? Like, I have 15 minutes. I can start another business, right?
That is a legitimate thing. It seems like it happens to everybody who starts businesses. They're like, oh, I think I have a handle on this business. Like, maybe we'll start this other one real quick. Like, as the other one's still falling apart, you just don't know it.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, I understand. Hey, I have a training company that's not doing too bad. I have this. Hey, I know. I'll start doing a podcast too, because that won't eat up any time.
Oh yeah, no, it's just what, 2 hour, hour a night, an hour once a week. How difficult can a podcast be, right?
Yeah, I've met people who do podcasts. This is easy.
Yeah. I've listened to a couple of them. They just talk.
Yeah, this will be super easy.
Yeah. No, I had a friend who was trying to start a podcast, and we were his first one, and we got on there. We're 30 minutes in, and we're like, man, this is the worst. We were saying it was a bad podcast. The people that were on it.
Those things do happen. Especially
you don't know how much work it goes into actually being able to have a podcast.
Yep. When you first start out and figure out, oh, hey, I have to talk and be semi-coherent. But,
yeah.
So Mitchell Defense. Tell me about Mitchell Defense then, because that's kind of why you're here tonight. As much as we would love to talk about boat charters in the Virgin Islands.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned all those for a reason. So not the boat charter. That was just a horrible mistake. The restaurant's more of a cautionary tale. Do not buy a restaurant. No. So the military medicine, the way that they teach military medicine is the whole body approach. So whenever you learn how to take care of someone, in a combat scenario where you have limited equipment, you know how the body works, so you know how to fix it. Going out to the oil field, it's all right, I know how the body works, and I don't know how to actually make body parts. So the oil field, we were working with very large equipment, and so going into how do these things actually function, all this equipment, the mechanical engineering aspects of it, and learning about coating technology, spring technologies, manufacturing technologies, all that stuff. That was where people always say aerospace for firearms, oh, aerospace engineering, all the manufacturing. It's manufacturing wise, you want aerospace because it's the tightest tolerances you can possibly ever get, and those guys are good at it. But when it comes to coding technologies and actually making these things work in very dirty scenarios, oil field is the proving ground for that. they're like 20 years ahead on coating technologies and springs and making things last a much longer period of time so the oil wells stay running. So yeah, learned a boatload during that. And then I actually got my master's degree, my MBA, while I was out there. And part of one of my master's projects is Mitchell Defense was actually created during the master's project. They told us to create a company as like a theoretical company. We ended up just actually creating it. We were gonna had a bunch of engineers. We were gonna redesign a new armor piercing round for the government. That was the entire like purpose of it. And my pipe.
That's exciting.
What?
That's exciting.
No, it was. We were actually really excited about it because like there's a weirdly large market for that. But we started the company. I think it was like in March or April or something of 2019. And I ended up selling the pipe company in June of 2019. So it was kind of and the pipe companies where all of our facilities were going to be held. So once I sold that, it was just like, okay, well, now what are we going to do? And then it just went, and then trying to figure out like where you're going to fit in. I wanted nothing to do with the AR market because it's so oversaturated. But then you start really diving into, then you start looking at the bolt rifles. That's extremely segmented. And in the pistol industry, it's just like, why would you even touch the pistol? Like that Glock's perfected the pistol.
Sure.
As far as reliability. So then I started diving more into ARs. And trying to find where the niche was in the industry. Like carbon fiber barrels were just kind of starting to come out. Like Proof Research was like finally getting them where they wouldn't catch on fire.
Yep.
And so I started looking at that, and I was like, okay, no one's really doing that at that time, back in 2019. So we started like really experimenting with that, and then that went down the rabbit hole of like, all right, what actually makes a good rifle? And that's when you start getting like the three pillars of our rifles: the accuracy, durability, and reliability. And really taking it with like the military approach, thinking like, okay, what do we need in this rifle to actually complete the mission? And so it's like, all right, the thing's got to go bang, it's got to shoot straight, and it's not got to not fall apart on you. Everything else doesn't really matter. Everything else is training at that point.
Correct. And that's probably one of the things that like I agree with the most is like that statement of there's just a handful of things you really need a rifle to do. And like you said, shooting straight is one of them. Now, not all M4s are really the best at shooting straight.
Well, what is mil spec? Mil spec's like what, 6 MOA or 5 MOA or something like that?
So the current grouping threshold, the threshold, so the minimum group allowed to move on past zeroing is 6 MOA at 25 meters. You have to be able to shoot a 6 MOA group.
So you basically can't have the shakes. Got it.
Yep. And it's, when you talk about stacking tolerances and things of that nature, you have what is by regulation required to be a 2 MOA rifle with 2 MOA ammunition.
Which is ball. That's about all you can get out of ball.
Yeah. And it's like 855 green tip, guys. It is not like angel kissed accuracy ammo.
Yeah. It's not the good old match grade.
No, it's stuff that goes down range and goes bang.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and so really looking, I mean, especially with ARs, I mean, you think about how many moving parts are actually in an AR. I mean, it's the bolt carrier group going into the buffer tube and then coming back. I mean, you have your trigger, like, and your safety selector for those stuff, but like the things that actually make it reliable. So we went down a massive rabbit hole of trying to find everything. We pulled a lot of stuff out of from the oil field, like, and thermal fit barrels. It is a thing in the industry. It's not very widely used. But they use it all the time in the oil field. And so,
all right, so thermal fit barrels. Well, we're gonna pause there because as Thomas said, they left me alone with an AR builder. This is going to be a long show. I will go down these nerd rabbit holes with you.
Hey, I will. Yeah, I will chase them with you.
Like, guys, we before we had like 20 minutes before we got on the air, and we went down like suppressors and other weird rabbit holes going like, oh yeah, we should talk about the show.
Yeah,
And,
it was like one of those. It was like talking about stuff like, okay, hey, we're gonna do this real quick, and like just roll with it.
yeah, don't worry, it'll be fine.
We gotta go live.
So thermal fit barrels. Thermal fit barrels are actually a super important thing, or I'm not going to say super important, but they are a very large factor to getting things to fit better. And can you explain why that is? Because there's a bond when you do a thermal fit that's not there when you just do a standard press fit.
Yeah. So this is where we got to our down our rabbit hole whenever we first decided to do this and like trying to find it. And actually, we actually brought up thermal fitting is like a thing we learned in the oil field just because of what it does for those guys. But so if you ever think about why bolt rifles are more accurate than ARs, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why they would be. I mean, there's some tolerance things of like, I mean, trying to squeeze out like 0.1 MOA with like a bolt rifle, but like your bolt is actually going into like your chamber, locking up, and whenever the round goes off, that's locked in there and that's not moving. So there aren't moving parts inside of the actual firing of the round that are causing the accuracy to shift. So trying to figure out like what's going on. So your barrel actually moves whenever like you have just like a press fit, or the when the barrel nut is actually pressed up against the barrel, locking in with torque. Like you have micro movements that affect your accuracy. What thermal fitting does is because it expands the metal and that metal goes and locks straight onto that barrel. It locks that barrel in just as tight as it would be if it was screwed on, like you have on a bolt rifle. So that's mostly where it affects the accuracy, and it also keeps that barrel in the exact same place the entire time. There's some harmonic stuff involved
Yep.
in it too, but
Also, I was going to say is it really starts to help with barrel harmonics because as that goes through and you have the the easiest way to say it is like bullet whip or the barrel whip because it's microscopic, but there is a little bit of movement in that as it goes through, especially
yeah.
in a
Well, I mean, if you
free-flow
think
barrel.
about it, if you have something vibrating and there's a little bit of a gap there, it's going to cause those. But if it's locked
Yeah,
in there, there's no room for vibrations.
yeah, and that's why it just makes sense to have thermal fitting because that really is a major play when that goes in to heat things up and bond that way. That is a sign of quality that other manufacturers don't get.
They
So
don't. And one other thing you have to really look out for in thermal fitting, we learned this the hard way, is the tolerances on an actual thermal fit. So between you have to match up your barrels and your thermal fit because if you heat that receiver up too much and expand the metal too much, you're going to get stress fractures inside the upper receiver. But if it's too loose, it's obviously not thermal fit at that point. So it's like you have to have like an actual like
a
perfect
spec.
fit. I can't remember what the actual like what you needed to expand, but like I mean, and that's a upper receiver problem and a barrel problem because your barrel extensions, I mean, they have a tolerance that's actually pretty wide, especially between barrel manufacturers that you have to really dive into
Figure
to
out,
make sure it's
yeah.
right.
Then you
And
get
then
down to
there's things like anodizing too. Like your anodize can't be too thick. You don't want to Cerakote it, but
yeah, people do.
no, you just like you don't want to Cerakote inside of the like where the barrel seats. Like you can say we Cerakote the upper
Yep.
receivers and the inside of them. We just have to mask out the middle.
So that you don't have that extra when you start adding, like Cerakote, especially because it's ceramic based, you start adding things like when you're adding thousandths of an inch or hundreds of thousandths even, that changes the spec of what your tightness is going to be as everything holds down.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I mean Cerakote for one. I mean, so anodizing, we have our standards for anodizing, but anodizing actually seeps into the metal, and then like Type 3 hard coat comes. It does add layers to the metal. It's not very much. I mean, it's under 1 mil, but Cerakote, like black Cerakote, is like the for H series is 1 mil, but like if you do like a white, it's like 7 mils. Like depending on
Yeah,
whatever color you're doing, and like I
it
think
can
like
be a lot.
FDE is like 3 mil. Like yeah, it could be significant where like you can't even put the barrel in there.
Yeah, so that is definitely another very large thing. But now that we've moved on and chased the rabbit hole of thermal fitting and why that's important,
Mm-hmm.
So after you've done the thermal fitted barrels, you move on, and I know that we made a joke earlier about bayonet lugs, and you don't offer those.
That is correct.
Um, but so moving forward from because the barrel really is kind of the heart of the rifle. So moving forward from that, what would you say the next like feature you guys have that really kind of starts to set you apart?
The bolt carrier groups. So the barrel really, the thermal fitting gives you the accuracy. The bolt carrier group, though, I mean, I think the bolt carrier group, that is the heart of the rifle, because that's the thing that's reliable. The thing can be stupid accurate, it can be stupid durable, but if that thing's not going to go bang and that bolt carrier group doesn't work properly, the rifle's completely useless. And you can have an effective inaccurate rifle. And I mean,
Yeah.
we've all played with the old Colt rifles. I mean, you can have bad durability and the things still go bang. So yeah, our bolt carrier groups, I think they're second to none. I think we've also proven that.
Yep. So
And
explain what goes into a bolt carrier group for somebody going like, why would I buy, the Mitchell Defense bolt carrier group instead of this one I found on PSA for $69?
oh man, this could be a podcast in and of itself. This is I'll kind of hit high level.
No, I'm
So
saying like this is because there are guys who like we all know because we've dealt with people, and
mhm.
you have someone who does it's just as good, and they think because it's says MPI and full auto that automatically this is good, and they don't know anything about metallurgy or things of that nature, or staked gas keys, or
all those fun things. Yeah, and then there's like, and we use we'll just go through the whole thing. So first and foremost, we precision grind all of our bolt carrier groups. I think that should be the standard for the industry. Because I mean, CNC machines can only get so close. Precision grinding is basically taking sandpaper. What?
it's finishing.
Yeah, it's finishing. So like it goes to an exact tolerance, and it eliminates any like deburring, any types of like any imbalances. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen like a bolt carrier group wear more at the front than it does anywhere else in there. Like those skids should be touching equally throughout the entire upper. But not only are they precision grind to an exact tolerance, they're precision grind to an exact tolerance to fit inside of our upper receivers. They will fit in any AR-15 upper receiver, but they fit like a glove inside of ours because think about like a hand fit 1911, but in a bolt carrier group. Not quite that much detail that goes into it. I mean, I'm not saying we're spending 30 hours putting
You're
together a
not
bolt carrier group, but
hand lapping.
yeah, we're not hand lapping a bolt carrier group. But and so after that, the coating, we spent an absorbent amount of time trying to find the right coating to put on these. And most people will use like a nitride coating or a phosphate. Phosphate was the military standard for the longest time. It's not anymore. So nitride coating was kind of pretty close because it had like really good lubricity to it, but it really didn't have the endurance to it. So we use Armor Lube. It's like a DLC nitride had a baby kind of thing.
Yep.
I can nerd out on a lot of stuff. Coding is like the guys who do coding. It's like they're talking to me. I'm like, I don't understand how you take gases and turn them into a solid in a machine that has a vacuum like space. Like I don't understand it.
Yeah, you put a vapor into this, and then you run an electrical charge through it, and then the electrons go through because you put the negative impulse onto the metal piece and the positive impulse into the air, and
and it's the types of gases that are going into it,
yeah,
and like so. One of the big problems with DLC and why we don't use like a traditional DLC that you see, DLCs can't go into crevices very well. Like you can get them kind of like in the exterior, but you can't get like an even layer. Armor Lube figured out how to do it. So the Armor Lube was designed over the last 10 years with the Army Research Center, which as of 2022, like November 2022, sometime around then, they're actually the new mil spec for the M4 bolt carrier group. Anything new coming in, I think they're actually coding a lot of old stuff too. But what the Army loved about it is it eliminated the need for chrome lining. which that was another like a fatal flaw inside the bolt carrier group. Is that chrome lining, you couldn't evenly put chrome lining in it. It's the same thing with barrels. I mean, there's companies out there that can get really close, but you can't guarantee that every single time you're going to do it the right way and perfect.
You want
So
a
it
fun
handles
fact?
heat just as what?
You want a fun fact for
Sure.
why the Army started chrome lining M16 parts?
Why?
It's because of something called galvanic corrosion.
Okay.
What galvanic corrosion is when you have two different types of metal
Mm-hmm.
touching each other and you have water running through them.
Oh.
So they were worried about that in Vietnam. So they said everything had to be chrome lined because that was how they solved it in the 60s. And then
Yeah.
they never looked at another way to do it until now.
That's why this thing is so crazy. Like diving into like the AR-15 platform and a lot of the companies that like that put stuff out. It's like no one's really put that much thought into like, all right, we're in a different century at this point. Like, let's maybe take some of the technology that we've learned over the last few years. Like, and a lot of companies just say it's like, oh, it works well enough, and it's like, all right, well, if I'm using this thing for my life, I want to know for a fact this is about as good as it gets. But yeah, so the armor lube coating, so like in a taper abrasion test, this is kind of like an example of like how much more durable this stuff is. One, it has a much lower friction coefficient. So having a lower friction coefficient means that it's grabbing onto less things and creating less heat, and slowing down. So it just basically glides inside the upper receiver. That, along with the E series Cerakote that we used, I mean, you can, whenever you run the rifles enough, you can start to feel there's like legitimately like zero friction to it. It's crazy. Oh yeah, so the taper abrasion testing. So they ran with taper abrasion testing is like basically taking sandpaper to the bolt carrier group for the coating to see how long it takes for it to wear off. Armor lube lasted like I think it was like 97,000 cycles, something like
Yeah,
that.
I
The
have your
next
website up, so I'm cheating. It's 97,000 cycles for armor lube,
yes,
25,000 for nitride, and 690 for phosphate or
yeah,
Parker.
so significantly outperformed. And that was something that we noticed because the first versions of our rifles all came with nitride and bolt carrier groups. And that was just something like we just bought them off the shelf and from a company and just said, hey, these work. We are getting a lot of wear in weird spots very, very quickly. And I was like, all right, well, this isn't the quality that we want in these rifles. So we ended up having to, which we didn't redesign the bolt carrier group. Bolt carrier group is what it is. Like there's only so much you can do with it. But we did really dive into like what tolerances we required in it. And so we all of our bolt carrier groups come in the raw and we have them personally coated. Because no one's making armor lube bolt carrier groups for one, but no one's making them to the tolerances that we are. The coating that's on the bolt carrier groups, it's second to none. There's only one other company that I know that's running it, and their bolt carrier groups probably cost twice as much, and they call it something different.
Strange.
It's crazy. Next thing that we do on the bolt carrier groups that's I don't think anyone else is doing. So whenever you remove chrome lining, you take out tolerances inside the bolt carrier group where the bolt seats or the gas rings touch inside there. So we actually mill ours so that with the idea that chrome lining is not going to go in there, so that it's tighter. So our gas rings fit perfectly inside there, but we also coat our gas rings. There's no other company in the industry that I know of that is doing it, and it makes our gas rings last about 4 to 5 times longer. But it also, between the armor lube coating and the gas rings, the coating on the gas rings.
Just a second. I think we have some technical issues there. We lost your audio. So not sure if your mic went dead or not as we start to figure out the joys of technology here. I will fill in with audio as he furiously tries to find another way to do this, which is okay. But no, looking at all those coatings and when you have this, gas rings are another part of the bolt carrier group that most people don't think about a lot of times. Ooh, that's
Bad.
all right. Well, we're getting some background noise, but sounds like a fan or something running in the background. Anyway, the as I was saying about gas rings, there's actually ways to test for gas rings to make sure that your bolt is working and that your gas rings are still good. And one of the things that I see people,
Is that
especially,
working?
yeah, now you're sound good.
Cool.
All right, is especially soldiers for whatever reason. I will see them like new soldiers put together a rifle, and they'll see the gas rings, and I don't know what it is, but they all want to line up the holes in the gas rings to make them just like one solid line across the three of them. And it's yeah, it'll still run,
Oh yeah, it'll still do what it's supposed to do.
but it's hey,
Gas
let's line this up. But when you have them out spaced correctly, you should be able to extend the bolt all the way, set the bolt carrier down on top of the bolt, and it shouldn't fall.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's all pressure.
Yeah, there are times when that does not work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh man, saying this is, oh, have you checked your gas? Those go bad. People don't realize those are actually a wear item.
Oh yeah, you're supposed to change them out like the typical ones. Like I think it's like every like 6,000 rounds or something like that.
Yeah. Now I have a couple rifles that I have not because I'm a terrible gun owner, and go, yeah, well, it's still running. So when it stops shooting, I'll start changing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but that's that having those gas rings where they don't wear out. I mean, I have one rifle we ran 40,000 rounds through that haven't changed the gas rings out yet, and it still works just fine.
Now that is actually a testament to like what you're saying about how your coating is and how that fits in there.
Mm-hmm.
That is truly a testament to that as a definite wear point, because it is about 6,000 rounds and those start to go bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, and that's like one of those like I feel like it's a very simple thing, and it's like a very like if you think about how like the bolt carrier group actually works, like I don't know why more companies haven't been trying to like upgrade like how that works. You know what I mean?
Well, I do, but I honestly think it's not so much that companies don't think about it as it is there are people who produce rifles, and then there are companies that produce what I like to call like an heirloom rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And an heirloom rifle is one that's nope, this is quality. This is a rifle I want to hand down to my kids. Like this is a rifle. It's great. It's functional. It works. It might not be super pretty, but this is something that is of high quality.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just wanted something that went bang to shoot into to the garbage, we could all go buy AKs. But
That's true.
I stopped shooting into the dumpster behind Circle K's a long time ago.
That's good. That's probably illegal. I'm not sure, but
Yep. No, so but those little details are what starts to separate things apart, because there's people who go, I just want to produce 1 million of these so that everyone has one.
that's the same thing with thermal fitting. It's like and you start thinking about like repping stuff out. It's like, all right, some companies that are putting out like a bunch of rifles a day, like they can't thermal fit because the amount of manpower and the amount of time it would take for them to do that to still make the same volume just wouldn't work.
Yeah. And that is why you step up to like an heirloom or a boutique rifle, where this isn't even really a boutique. This is an heirloom quality rifle that's going to work when you need it to. Not
absolutely.
Not
and that's like yeah. Yeah. So another thing we do, so our gas keys are all staked. Obviously, we also use Oaks to optimize carrier key screws. OCKS.
So I'm going to share this picture for anyone who is who's watching live. What he's talking about is these screws here And let's see if I can zoom in and still have this work. But if you look at this picture, you can see there's actually a dimple in the screws in the gas key that are made for staking. And that is just amazing. Like that is when I first saw that, it was one of those like, why didn't I think of that moments?
It's one of those no brainer things. You're just like, all right, well, this makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah, you see, you're like, "Ooh, man, if I would have thought of that, like,
yeah, that, and so we also those I off the top of my head I can't remember because like I can't remember the exact torque specs, but like a standard screw, like it only increases it by like, or staking it only increases the torque by like 30 or 40 pounds, but this like raises, like with these on there, it raises it up to like 120 to 130 pounds of pressure in order to pull the screw out, which is, you're, if those
You're
screws
not-
back out, it's an act of God. Like he came down personally and did it.
that's gonna break your fat wrench.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've had to break a couple of them that it's like tightening down a Magnum bolt rifle. Then we also seal our gas keys as well, which is I mean, same thing. Machining can only get so close. We seal them up with like a gasket seal, so the gas can't seep out underneath the gas keys.
And for anyone who shoots, like, you might think this isn't that's not a big deal. For anyone who shoots suppressed, you will quickly see exactly how much carbon comes out from between your gas key and your bolt carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get that extra, back pressure coming back through, you see that very clearly, very quickly.
Oh yeah.
And
No, I mean, if you ever take your gas key off, like you see it, most of them they'll start burning out, your gas rings and your carrier key. I mean, if you start losing gas inside your bolt carrier group, you're just going to lose your reliability. Lose a lot of gas to lose a lot of reliability, but
yep. So, all right, we've explained why the bolt carrier is important and what you consider the heart of the rifle, which I can see that argument being made. The bolt carrier is the one of the most important parts of reliability. And as you move forward from there, what is so your barrels are all thermal fit, and excuse me about that. I'm sorry. That's one of those where
yeah,
it's like I'm talking and now I can't because nature.
it's air.
Yeah, when you move forward from from where you were at looking at, all right, we have our barrel, we have our bolt carrier. What is the next step for you guys to make your rifles?
Buffer system.
Buffer?
Yeah. So you're just kind of moving down all the moving parts. So springs are, in my opinion, I don't know. We did a lot of research and a lot of stuff with springs in the oil field, just because a lot of things operate on springs, and springs wear out. So like a regular carbine spring lasts about 8,000 cycles. Our spring, we do a proprietary metal treatment to it, but they're flat wire springs. So our springs will last about 200,000 cycles versus the 8,000 of another one before they start losing springiness to them. But it also gives about 30% more forward pressure to the bolt carrier group. So no matter how dirty, so the bolt carrier group, dirt can't attach to it and carbon can't attach to it because it has low lubricity. The E-Series Cerakote that's inside the upper receivers also has very low lubricity to it, so dirt and carbon can't connect to it. But even if it does get dirty in there, that spring is causing all that more forward pressure, and it's just pushing that bolt carrier group through all that to get home. So
Yeah, it just makes sense because physics.
Yeah, because physics. Yeah, So in what all this accumulates to, it's like all right, cool. In theory, all this makes sense. Like, all right, it increases reliability. It sounds good, but like, what does that mean for what does an increased reliability actually mean? So we define it as how many rounds can it run before it sees a failure without cleaning or lube. Our last endurance test, we went 17,554 rounds before we saw the first failure.
Now that is impressive that you had ammo that worked that well.
Yes. Yeah. It is actually, this is an independent test too. I don't even know what kind of ammo they were using.
Like,
but
I've seen it where I had problems finding that many rounds that would work consistently.
yeah. I actually probably should ask what ammo they were using. But yeah, they actually called me like 6 months in. It's like, hey man, we had our first failure. It's like, oh man, like how much work did y'all put in on that? Like how many rounds? Because 10,000 is like our standard. Like that's the baseline.
Yeah.
If they can't perform past that, it doesn't go to market. And he was like, yeah, 17,554. I'm like, okay, just clean it. Like you're good. It performed according to plan. Like it's hard to ask for a whole lot more than that.
Pull the bolt out, wipe it down with a rag, put it back in.
And that's what he did. He just pulled it out, wiped it down, put it back in, and it kept running.
Yep. And that's a lofty standard to get to.
Yes. And it was we were pretty excited whenever it happened. And I've done 10,000 round tests. Like I knew it would get to 10,000 rounds, but it was.
And it's weird to be excited about a failure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so we did our 9 mils. So we make 3 platforms. We have the AR-10, which is the pipe hitter, the Doc, which is our AR-15 platform, and then our AR-9 platform, which is the Rat Dog. But when we did the endurance test on it, we actually ran that in unison with other rifles to try and like baseline reliability. And we stopped the test at 8,000 rounds because all the other rifles failed at about 1,000 rounds. So like I was like, we won. I don't know why we're continuing this test.
This is the game over.
Yeah, we're at this point we're just shooting ammo.
Yep. Okay, so do you guys use a special trigger, anything like that, where you add on your? I listen to people who are trigger snobs, and like I have friends who will go through, and I know we both talked about like people who buy Gucci things because the internet told them this is what they're supposed to like.
Yeah.
And then like they'll buy a rifle and they're like, oh, I'm gonna put this trigger in it, from a company that starts with a G and no one can pronounce. And I'm like, okay, why do you need that? I'm like, well, because it's supposed to be a really good trigger. And I said, well, I hate them, but it's like I've shot a lot of mil spec triggers with just like a JP spring kit, and that's kind of my favorite trigger.
Yeah. So yeah, going off on that, we use Geisley triggers.
Yep, fair enough. Let me just
you set me up on that one. All right. Let's
just go ahead and make sure I tell everyone what's crap.
Yeah. We use Geisley triggers. There's a couple of reasons why. I use them all the time in the military. I fell in love with them. I love a good 2-stage trigger for combat and like law enforcement and like self-defense. It's more of just it's more shooting what we know. And we did a lot of testing on them, and they did work a lot better than like a mil spec, or even like changing out like the spring kits and stuff. Yeah, so we use Geisley's. And then like so what?
Everyone loves them for a reason, and I can be the outlier on it because I'm also the guy who doesn't like Glock.
Yeah, well, okay, so and this is like firearms as a whole. I mean, pistols it's more so than anything else, but like the best rifle is the one you can shoot well. If you don't like it, you don't have to like the same thing that I like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's because you have different hands, different shooting styles, different like everything. Like some people like a single stage. I know a lot of guys who are in tier 1 units that run they don't run ambi anything on rifles because they can't. They hate it. And like I know guys who run single stage mil spec triggers and all their stuff. I know guys that run Geisley triggers and all their stuff.
And it comes down to a preference.
Yeah, flat triggers, curved triggers. I mean, it's whatever you can shoot the best is the best weapon for you.
There's like a weird niche industry just for that.
Yeah.
But so Geisley triggers, and which they are almost an industry standard for quality for people to hold things to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say sometimes I'm like, no, they're not always for me, but that's
they work reliably, and they're the most consistent as far as manufacturing as well. So like for us, it's not like about putting one trigger in a rifle. It's about putting 1,000 triggers in a rifle and knowing that they're all going to be the exact same. So their manufacturing techniques work really well with us, just because we can get them in and we know they're going to be perfect, and they're going to work.
Well, and to that, I have actually in the last 2 months, I had a guy from what people formerly thought of as a quality rifle manufacturer. A lot of people still do. I mean, it's not a company that's called like White Hail or anything like that, but they had one of their factory cassette style triggers in it that the trigger bar snapped in half on.
Oh my gosh!
And I was like, it's like leaving for a hog hunt. He's like, oh, my gun doesn't work. Oh, let me take a look at. Oh, there's your problem. It can't reset because the trigger bar broke in half.
Wow. We've seen that problem with our PCCs. Well, not our PCCs, but like when we were testing them. I mean, there's a very well-known company out there that their PCC comes with a Geisley trigger in it, and Geisley specifically says, "Do not use these in a PCC. It voids your warranty."
And it snapped it.
Yeah, well, that's in their production rifles. I mean, they are still shipping them out. I'm like, and we had issues with Geisley triggers in our PCCs because like PCC is a very rough system. Like you have to beef up everything to make it work right.
You don't think 9mm is a lot of like velocity or for blowback, but when you gauge how fast the system runs by how much mass the bolt has, like that again, physics are a thing.
Oh yeah,
and
it's just like taking a sledgehammer constantly and just beating everything inside that gun.
Yeah. Well, and that's why. Like if you look at certain barrel lengths and things of that nature can also be a major issue.
Yeah.
Just because there are guns that will start to beat themselves to death very fast.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of I mean you're controlling an explosion. So it's like, all right. But yes, we also use can I come back to the right rabbit hole. We use Radian charging handles and Radian safety selectors. And the reason for that, so all three of those, Geisley, Radian, and Radian charging and safety.
Yep.
I couldn't figure out how to design one better than those are.
I love the Radian Raptor. Like it's my go-to charging handle.
It's so smooth. Like you don't even know when it unlocks. Like it's just like, like I said, could not have designed one and built one better. So it's
that's 100% the correct thing.
Their safety selectors are amazing too.
They figured it out.
Yeah, and their safety selectors, and like one one big issue that we had, and you see it everywhere, but the screwed in, like, so they're pinned in. I don't know if you ever like actually assemble. Yeah, so they're pinned in, so they can't back out. So we always had issues with any of the screwed ones that, like, during our 10,000 round endurance test, they'd always come unscrewed. It doesn't matter how much Loctite we threw in those things. They always came unscrewed. So that was where it was kind of like, all right, well, this is we have to have pinned in. Like there's no.
Yeah. I've had them back out on a lot of, or the screwed in ones back out on my rifles, where it's the reason why I carry fix-it sticks with me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Oh, hey, this is coming loose. Let me fix it quick.
Yeah. Let me fix it with the stick.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
So when we talked about, briefly touched on the rifles. So you have 3 series. You have the Doc, the Pipe Hitter, and the Rat Dog. And which are, as you said, your PCC, your 308, or whatever platform we're going to choose to call the 308 sized AR. AR10.
Oh, AR10. It just everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's SR25, LR308, whatever.
DPMS or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's but when you go back, I will have to say, you've almost sold me on purchasing one of these rifles right now just because of the name. Solely because I am a GWAT baby, so I need a GWAT dock in my life.
Yeah, well, that was naming rifles was like one you can see we got extremely lazy when it came to the pipe hitter line. Because the names start being like 308 18-inch stainless steel, like it's, and then like the GWAT dock, the SOIDC dock, the Triad dock. So the GWAT, it was kind of like because that's kind of like our baseline rifle.
Yep.
I mean, the only difference between the entire dock line is the barrel and handguard. Yeah, because everything else is the same from all the way back. But the GWAT dock being the baseline rifle, it's built for law enforcement. That's kind of our target market with that one, and we sell a lot of them to law enforcement, and then also the government. And so GWAT was kind of like the perfect thing. It's like, okay, well, same thing with military medicine. The medicine that we had at the beginning of the GWAT versus what we had at the end of it was just night and day difference. And it was just, you learn through trial and error. Same thing with like the rifles. I mean, like they 20 years of battlefield lessons, and that you get the GWAT dock. That's the.
Hey, I remember being part of the invasion of Iraq with a M16A2 and a saw that was full-size saw before they came out with like paratrooper kits or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's fun. It's always go back to the medicine side because it's just what I know the most as far as like the war.
And tourniquets were terrible. Never put a tourniquet on.
So, and what the funny thing is that like we actually sat down, talked to a lot of the guys that are over at the schoolhouse for SOCM, which is the Special Operations Medic course. And we were sitting there joking about like, because they're like, yeah, we haven't really written anything down. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, our lesson plan's actually just from memory. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, we're actually trying to like record some of the things that we've learned, like that aren't recorded. I'm not understanding what you're saying. And we saw it like in the beginning of the GWAT, because like we were like the military medicine was like, hey, guy gets shot, pump him full of IV. Like that's like the standard. Like you get an IV in him and just run fluids. But like guys are blowing clots and bleeding out. And then like talking to Vietnam vets, like, yeah, we learned that in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And like it's like, well, why would y'all not have written it down? They're like, well, I don't know. The war ended and we just stopped doing medicine. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I remember being a combat lifesaver back in the day. Like that was one of the things I had tasked with my gun truck, and I carried IV kits with me. It was like I'd go out the gate with like 7 IV kits. Now, granted, most of it was for dehydration or other things like that, and it's hey, like we'll stick you with a bag and hang it here, and let me know when you're gonna pee. But
let me know if you have to pee. Yeah. If you don't, let's just try one more bag.
What are you gonna do? We're just gonna add another 1,000.
I'm gonna pretend like you're not in kidney failure.
We just pumped 2,000 milliliters of fluid into you. You're fine.
Yeah.
But no, so that was the amount of things that changed over the last 20 years are astounding. I know.
Oh yeah. No, it's.
So, side note that isn't gun related. Did you ever do a pig lab?
Oh yeah, yeah. And goat labs that we don't do anymore.
Yeah, allegedly.
Yeah,
definitely don't do those anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's.
Yeah. I've learned more from people talking about those than anything else, and it's that's actually real world.
It's real world and traumatizing. Yeah,
especially the barbecue afterwards.
Yeah.
But no. So, is there anything else about the rifles or the company that you think people need to know?
Oh man, there's all kinds of stuff. So one of the things about the company, and like this is like my thing. 70% of my business goes to law enforcement and government. I don't make rifles that are designed to be looked at. They're designed to be used and to work. And so like that's why I don't know if we were live when we were talking about this, but like I've had the hardest time breaking into the civilian market because I don't actually understand why the civilians buy guns. They want the coolest thing, the thing that looks neat, the different Cerakotes, and it's like if you're looking for like the thing that's cool to look at, like probably not our rifles. If you want the most functional rifle that's on the market, that's the most reliable, accurate, and durable, that's us. And like one of the last QC steps, and I think this sounds like it's actually a thing that we do. It sounds super gimmicky, but the last QC step, like, would you trust this rifle with your life? Because it's probably like 70% of our business is going to people who are going to possibly need to use it to defend their life. So that's kind of my shtick on that.
But that is something that's to be noted, because it's like I have several different firearms. Like I've been through a pile of ARs. I have some that I've testing and stuff like that, where it's like, hey man, that one looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all right. That's it. It runs. It has some neat features, but I would not trust it if my life depended on it.
Yeah, I would say, like, if the end of the world happens, like, what gun are you taking with you? It's like, I want it to be ours.
Yeah, and that is, I will say it's like, I got introduced to your company by Sean from We Like Shooting, and it was, he handed me one of your rifles at a range day we were both at, and he goes, "Hey, shoot this." And he didn't say a word. He didn't say whose it was, anything like that. Literally handed me a rifle and goes, "All right, man, shoot this." So I loaded it, and when you talked earlier about like the fitment of it was like, oh, that's smooth, like that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started running steel on it, to the point of he was like, "Hey man," like tapped me on the shoulder. I was like, "Oh, sorry, I ran out of ammo," and handed his gun back to him. But he's like, "What'd you think of that?" I was like, "That shot remarkably smooth."
Mm-hmm.
And it's, what I mean by that is, it wasn't like, oh, super duper muzzle brake making everything come down. It felt right, if that makes sense. It's kind of like getting the difference between driving a fine automobile and a 97 Toyota Corolla. They'll
Yes.
both do 70 miles an hour, but one's going to feel a lot better.
Yes. Well, that's like the way the buffer system operates, and the way the bolt carrier group and everything's moving in unison with each other, and the entire system is designed to work together. That's how you get like a super flat shooting rifle. So like the rifle shoots super flat without having to have a comp. I will go on tangents about comps, and I'll try not to do that right now. But my thing. So putting a compensator on a rifle is compensating for poor rifle construction. If you have to have a compensator on a rifle to reduce the the amount of recoil and keep the thing on target, something else is wrong inside your rifle.
100%.
Yeah, and when people were like, we went to the IV-88 range day, and there was a very well-known company that had the full auto with a comp on it that was just blowing us the entire time. I almost lost it on them. I was so mad. It's like, one, running a comp in a range. This is me going on my tangent. Is the rudest thing you could do. But
well, we talked about this earlier. We weren't recording yet, but I was like, man, you get so used to shooting suppressed, and like you go to a public range, especially if you're there by yourself, you're like, all right, you're shooting and you're doing your stuff, and you're like, all right. And then the guy comes in, it's like, all right, hey, all right. And then they touch off around, and you forget you're not wearing ear pro because some uncivilized heathen shows up.
Yeah.
And like I can't say I've seen comps just ruin a range day, because it's, oh, hey, we're doing this, and then somebody shows up with like a 300 Win Mag with a 2-port muzzle brake on it.
Everyone has a concussion afterwards.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, I've got a 300 Weatherby that the last time I shot it under a covered range, it gave me a nosebleed, and I was like, this thing is dumb.
Yeah, no, comps are not my favorite thing in the world. And that's like with New Jersey rifles, you have to put a comp on them, and I'm just like, they're like, well, what comp should we use? I'm like, I don't want to sell you a rifle.
Yeah, so that is, you guys don't do any of the band state things, do you?
We I mean, we have a New Jersey compliant rifle just because it's across the bridge.
Yeah.
But we make modifications. I mean, California, we'll send it to a dealer in California, and they can do all the stuff they want to do.
With their fin grip and whatever.
Yeah, and same thing with Delaware. We'll ship it to a dealer down there that can fit it out on whatever they need to do. New York, I haven't even dove into what's legal in New York. We sell to some law enforcement up in New York, but I don't do anything with.
See, at this point, I'm not sure I'm legal in California because, it's like,
California's so nuts. Like, if we are going to do a demo at Camp Pendleton, we have to, it's like mail our guns to Camp Pendleton, and transfer them to the government, kind of, and like we can't fly them in and take them to the demo.
That's ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah,
it is. New Jersey. We did a law enforcement show in New Jersey, and I probably talked this guy's ear off, the police, whatever, people that were like, and I was like, hey, what am I allowed? Because I mean, as an FFL SOT, I can pretty much do anything, but like some states still have some restrictions. So I was like, hey, what am I allowed to bring to this show? I mean, it's a law enforcement show. I need to be able to bring the SBRs. These things are for like SWAT teams and stuff.
Yeah.
And the law enforcement officer, without even skipping a beat, just stopped and was like, you can bring in SBRs as long as they're full auto. You can't bring in a semi-auto SBR. And
what?
I paused for a second. He was like, he's like, I said it right. I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. He said, I don't make the rules. I just tell you what you can and cannot do.
That is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Because there's no rule against it or for it or whatever.
Yeah, gun laws are dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Quote Nick Dooley.
Yes.
No, I do know this, and I would be remiss without saying this. There is only one thing I've seen that could probably make your guys' rifles better.
What's that?
And that is a VZ grip. And VZ grips are great because they're made from a solid block of G10. G10 is great because it is made from machined from a solid block of G10, and it doesn't get slippery when covered with mud, blood, or sweat. The unique grip angle and the unique grip and texture and 17-degree grip angle with wide varieties of textures available, from extreme to smooth, along with shorty grips that are available. You can get Colt 1911 grips. Well, not just Colt, but any 1911 grips with different palm swells, safety cuts, bottom profiles, and more. And with that, guys, there's one coupon code that is good for all VZ grips, and that is AR-15 podcast. Nice. All right, that was the end of the ad read. I should have added that earlier, but I was like, oh wait, I haven't added an ad read yet.
I'll have to try that though, because like I love what they're doing, like with like a lot of like the G10 with like the grips that are on like for like the M-locks and stuff.
Oh, they actually make a full M-lock G10. M-lock forend or M-lock like textured grips.
Yeah.
And then my co-host hates the grips that I love because they have a ultra aggressive, like it's one of those ones that it'll itch your skin off. And I'm like,
yeah,
this is great because I can't let go of it. It became a part of my hand. Yeah. And he likes more of they call it the grenade texture. It's just like a solid, the old pineapple grenade texture all the way around.
Yeah.
But
I'm an aggressive grip person. Like because my hands sweat so bad. Like I love the aggressive grip, but it does just eat you alive.
Mine as well. And that's why I'm like, oh no, this is it. Like but VZ's AR grips they are without a doubt my favorite.
Yeah.
And like I pay my own money for them, even though they're a sponsor.
Yeah. Hey, that's something. Do you use a discount code though? That's the
100% I use our discount code.
You don't pay full price. All right.
I mean, would I? Yes. But
yeah, no.
Those are just things that like it's like I would, but I don't have to.
Yeah. But the options to not. So yeah.
No. So well, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on. I know I've had a great time tonight talking about just nerd rifle stuff. and why certain things are important. And again, coming down to picking a rifle that you'd have for the end of the world. That's actually what it's kind of all about. Like I love, having a safe full of random ARs that are good for different bits and tricks and stuff like that. But like I know guys who have competition ARs that run aluminum bolt carrier groups that are good for 1,500 rounds.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
No, I always have fun going head to head, like in law enforcement demos, like 'cause we go out to the range and they run like obstacle courses, and depending on the department. But like I love going head to head and being the only one that doesn't fail, because in the tactical games we just broke into a little bit of the tactical games. We just sponsored our first athlete, and her and her husband ran it, and that's what he texted me. He was like, "Dude," he's like, it was so dirty and muddy that first day for training. He's like, I was so scared that they weren't going to run, like for the event. And he's like, we didn't have one issue. So that guys were having guns jam up all the time, like the whole time. And like the AR-10 platform too. We had a guy who he started doing competitions, and he was like, and I don't know how he got this metric, but like he texted me, he's like, "Hey, I'm doing like 36% better with this rifle, and like I actually won the gas gun competition like the first day I had it." I was like, wow,
right on. That is an interesting metric.
Yeah, I don't know where he got it from, but I was just like, oh cool, you won, awesome.
Yay, go team, good.
Woo, that's what was supposed to happen. But he was also saying that his AR-10 was like his 6.5 Creedmoor was the only AR-10 or the gas gun that didn't fail out on the range.
I could believe that.
Yeah, it's a weird system.
Yeah, AR-10, like the best and worst thing about the AR-15 is mil spec.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I say it's the best and worst thing, because there is a standard that everyone builds things to.
Oh yeah, I mean there's the interchangeable parts, and then the AR-10 is just like it's very company specific.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, this is technically this, but won't work with that. And they're supposed to be the same thing.
It might fit in your gun. It might not fit in your gun. Possibly check headspace.
Yeah, be prepared to spend a lot of money to figure out why your 16-inch gun doesn't want to run.
Yeah, we one of the things that we do on the pipe hitter line, we have a 12-inch 308, and it is the one gun. Well, I said I'd never do a PCC, but it was the one gun in the AR-10 I said or the pipe hitter line that I said I'd never do, because I think it's short barrel 308 is just the silliest thing in the world. I mean, if you want to go short barrel, like do an 8.6 blackout, something like that. But we had a department down in Florida call us and say, "Hey, really like these rifles, but we need a 12-inch 308 for helicopters." And I was like, that is the only reason I would do one.
Okay.
I was like, that actually makes sense. Okay, you talked me into it.
Yeah, this is a very use case scenario.
Very use case. It makes sense. I mean, moving around in tight spaces like that. I mean,
yeah.
I always think about moving around in tight spaces like working in a house, but I never thought about shooting out of helicopters like that and moving around.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I understand it. It's not like guys who want a 7-inch 5.56, which I still don't understand.
Which we make an 8-inch, and I will tell you exactly why we make an 8-inch. The UN gave us a phone call and said that they were wanting us to bid on a job for an 8-inch 5.56 rifle and full auto that can engage targets out to 300 yards. And we were, I want to say we were the only one that actually met the standard.
Okay, well, like, color me impressed.
No, I also think it's stupid. We offer it. It's on the website. I mean, if anything we design for the government, we put out on the website because we have the design for it, or it's good. But if you want a short barrel AR-15 platform, get a 300 blackout. It only makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, especially at that length. Like I have 11.5-inch guns that are 5.56 that I run with a can on because I just don't want the extra length with it, and it's cheaper than 300 blackout. But I also don't want the gun to beat itself to death.
Yeah. So our shorty is a 10.3, and that's about as short as I think you should go with a 5.56. And the only reason we do it is really I was just trying to prove that we could. But like, I mean, working in houses, like just
Yep.
having that short, like it's not a long range rifle. You can engage targets out to 300 accurately, but that was
It's not
kind of
what
like,
it's for.
yeah, and like in the way our buffer system operates now, everything like flows in there. The thing I was trying to prove is that we can do a shorter barrel rifle, and also but have like the enjoyableness of shooting it that you have with like a 16-inch rifle, like a mid-length gas system. And it all like the way our buffer spring operates, it just you stay super flat, and so guys aren't like it's not a harsh thing to shoot.
Yeah. No, that is good to know and good to hear. So, Nathan, where can everybody listening find you and Mitchell Defense?
Yeah, so our website is mitchelldefense.com. That's where you can find all of our stuff. We're on Instagram. That's kind of our main platform for social media. I think it's like @Mitchell_defense. There's 2 of us on there. You'll know which one's us, which one's not pretty quickly. I will say that the other Mitchell Defense has grown in subscribers significantly since we came into business. And I can only think that people are following them, thinking that's us. But yeah, those are the 2 main places to find us.
Right on. And so thank you so very much for coming on with us tonight. Is there anything you have any parting words before we shut down for the evening here? Because we've had you, kept you for about an hour. So
yeah, it's about 10 o'clock out here tonight, so I'm ready for bed. But no, so we have a discount code for all your listeners. Site-wide 20 gets you 20% off anything on the website until end of next month, whatever next month is, May 30th.
That is awesome, and thank you so much, guys. You need to be using that because if you wanted something, that is amazing. So site-wide 20.
Yep, all one word.
Well, that is amazing. Thank you so very much for that. And as we move forward and start to sign off here, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our good friends at Patriot Patch Company, patriotpatch.co. Join their Patch of the Month club. They always have neat ones like this, which is all luck, no skill. And they do morale patches. They make probably the best mouse pads in the world, and they call them gun cleaning mats. But I feel too bad getting them dirty, so I use them as mouse pads and keyboard pads. And they're awesome for that. Guys, check them out. Patriot Patch, patriotpatch.co. And well, guys, you can find us anywhere podcasts are found, but you guys already know that because you're listening. So with that, everyone find us on our social medias. Make sure you interact and use that code sitewide20. And you folks out there, stay safe and stay armed. Support the people who support the show. Primary Arms, VZ Grips, 4patriots.com, and Patriot Patch Company. Be sure to check us out on social media. AR-15 Podcast 2.0 on Instagram. AR-15 Podcast 2.0 on YouTube. AR-15 Podcast 2 on Twitter. AR-15 Podcast on Facebook and wherever podcasts are found. If you just want to drop us a line, let us know how we're doing, or give us a show idea, make sure to send that email to AR-15podcast 2.0 @gmail.com.